The marble counter shined under the pendant lights as Jared King poured a glass of Macallan 18. Outside, the Texas hills rolled on, lined with the luxury homes he'd made his fortune selling. 35, rich, successful, but clueless about the truth. Marla, his lovely wife, drifted through the kitchen. They'd been married 6 months, and he was still just as taken with her as the day he first saw her in that supermarket, working the floor as a sales associate. "Honey, your mother's calling again," Jared said, watching Brenda's name flash across Marla's phone for the third time that evening. "She probably wants to discuss the charity gala," Marla replied without looking up, her drawl thick as honey but somehow lacking warmth. Jared studied his wife's face, the perfect cheekbones, the practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Something had been gnawing at him for weeks. The way she flinched when he touched her unexpectedly. How she never initiated intimacy. The strange, knowing looks between her and her mother. "Speaking of Brenda, she's been in our guest house for 3 months now. Don't you think it's time she found her own place?" Marla's spine stiffened. "She's helping us adjust to married life, Jared. She's been through 2 divorces. She knows things." "What kind of things?" "Just relationship things." Marla's voice carried an edge now. "Why are you being so hostile toward my mother?" Before Jared could respond, Brenda herself swept through the back door without knocking, something that had begun to irritate him more with each passing day. At 58, she carried herself with the predatory grace of a woman who'd learned to survive by manipulating others. "Jared, darling," Brenda's voice dripped synthetic sweetness. "I was just telling Marla how lucky she is to have landed such a successful man. Not every girl gets to live in a mansion before she's 30. The way she said landed made Jared's skin crawl, like Marla had been fishing for him. "I need to update your iPad," Jared told Marla, desperate to change the subject. "The new real estate app I'm beta testing needs to sync across all our devices." "Oh, that old thing? I barely use it anymore." Marla waved dismissively, but Jared caught the quick glance she exchanged with her mother. Later that evening, alone in his study, Jared connected Marla's iPad to his computer. As the sync began, old message threads started populating, including some that had been archived. His finger hovered over a conversation between Marla and Brenda from 8 months ago, just before he'd proposed. What he read next shattered his world. "Brenda, you don't have to love him, baby girl. Just marry him and stay sweet until we figure out the next move. He's got that new development deal worth $12 million. You'll have access to everything." "Marla, he's boring as watching paint dry, but fine. I can fake it for a while. The $2,000 you're paying me monthly makes it bearable." Brenda, "That's my smart girl. Have your fun on the side if you need to. Just don't get caught. Your marriage is your paycheck now." Marla, "Already working on that. Nick's been asking questions about when Jared travels for work." Brenda, "Perfect. Rich men are so trusting when they think they've found their dream girl." Jared's hands trembled as he scrolled through months of messages. Every kiss, every "I love you," every intimate moment, all of it had been a performance. His wife was being paid by her own mother to stay married to him, while planning infidelity from the very beginning. The whiskey glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. 3 days passed before Jared could look at Marla without feeling physically sick. He installed discreet surveillance cameras throughout the house, positioning them to capture every room except the bathrooms. He still had some dignity left. His first discovery came Tuesday afternoon, while he was supposedly at a property showing in Cedar Park. The living room camera captured Marla opening the front door for a man Jared didn't recognize. Tall, muscular, with the cocky swagger of someone half his age. Nick, Jared realized. The personal trainer mentioned in the messages. He watched his wife lead another man up the stairs to their bedroom, her hand trailing along his arm with an intimacy she'd never shown her own husband. For the next 2 hours, Jared sat in his Range Rover in an office parking lot, watching his marriage dissolve in real time through a smartphone app. When he finally returned home, Marla was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "How was your day, sweetheart?" she asked, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. "Productive," Jared managed, tasting bile. "Closed the Henderson property. How about you?" "Oh, just boring housework." That evening, while Marla showered, Jared checked the bedroom cameras. The bed had been stripped and remade, but they'd missed a detail. Nick's workout glove had fallen behind the nightstand. Physical evidence of his wife's betrayal, literally within arm's reach of where Jared slept every night, the next morning brought fresh horrors. While Marla was at her supposed yoga class, Jared's surveillance picked up a phone conversation between her and Brenda in the guest house. "He's getting suspicious," Marla's voice crackled through the hidden microphone. "Asked about you finding your own place." Don't panic, baby. Men like Jared don't want to believe they've been fooled. His ego won't let him see the truth. What if he finds out about Nick? Then we move to plan B. Cry, apologize, blame it on feeling neglected. Rich men love to feel guilty. It makes them generous in divorce settlements. Speaking of which, that prenup his lawyer drafted never got filed, remember? I made sure of that. If this goes south, you'll get half of everything plus alimony. Jared's blood turned to ice. Even his legal protections had been sabotaged. He spent the rest of the week gathering evidence, photographs of Nick entering and leaving the house, financial records showing Brenda's monthly payments to Marla, phone records proving their coordination of the deception. His wife wasn't just cheating. She was the centerpiece of an elaborate long-term fraud. On Friday evening, Jared made his first move. "Brenda," he said over dinner, his voice carefully controlled, "I've been thinking about everything you've sacrificed to help us adjust to married life. You deserve a real vacation." The older woman's eyes lit up with greedy interest. "Oh, Jared, that's so thoughtful, but I couldn't possibly." "I insist. I've already booked you a 7-day Mediterranean cruise. First-class cabin, all expenses paid. You leave Sunday." Marla looked genuinely confused by her husband's sudden generosity toward her mother, but Brenda was already mentally spending the money. "Well, if you're sure." Brenda's smile was predatory. "Marla can manage without me for a week, can't you, baby?" "Of course, Mama." As Jared watched his wife agree to her mother's absence, he felt the first spark of satisfaction he'd experienced in weeks. The puppeteer was about to leave the building, and he planned to cut every string while she was gone. Brenda's departure Sunday morning felt like a prison door opening. Jared waved goodbye from the driveway, his arm around Marla's waist in a performance of marital bliss, while internally counting down the hours until he could begin dismantling their conspiracy. Monday brought the first phase of his plan. Using a burner phone and fake email account, Jared contacted Nick's gym with an irresistible offer: a fitness modeling shoot for a luxury real estate marketing campaign, location to be determined, payment of $5,000 for 4 hours of work. Nick bit instantly. "Tuesday, 3 p.m., Jared told him over the phone, disguising his voice with a slight accent. 1247 Copper Ridge Drive. It's a model home. Perfect backdrop for the upscale fitness lifestyle we're marketing." "Sounds great, man. Should I bring different workout gear?" "Just bring yourself. We'll provide everything else." Tuesday afternoon, Jared arrived at the model home, a sprawling 8,000 square foot showcase property he'd used for client entertainment, 2 hours early. He disabled the main security system but left the backup cameras running. What was about to happen needed to be recorded, but he couldn't risk the footage being automatically uploaded to the cloud. At exactly 3 p.m., Nick's lifted pickup truck pulled into the circular driveway. Jared watched from an upstairs window as his wife's lover strutted toward the front door, gym bag slung over his shoulder, expecting easy money and probably planning to brag to Marla about his good fortune. The doorbell's chime echoed through the empty house like a funeral bell. "You must be Nick," Jared said, opening the door with his most professional smile. "I'm the photographer. Come in, come in." Nick stepped into the foyer, his eyes immediately drawn to the soaring ceilings and crystal chandelier. "Damn, this place is sick. Your client's got serious money." "Oh, he does indeed." Jared closed the door behind Nick, the sound of the deadbolt sliding home unnaturally loud in the silence. "He's also got serious problems with people who take things that don't belong to them." Something in Jared's tone made Nick's smile falter. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been screwing my wife in my bed for 3 months. The color drained from Nick's face as recognition dawned. He took a step backward, his gym bag sliding off his shoulder and hitting the marble floor with a thud. "Look, dude, I can explain—" "No need." Jared's voice remained eerily calm. "I have videos, photos, text messages. I know exactly what you've been doing with Marla while I'm out working to pay for the house you've been violating." Nick's eyes darted toward the door, calculating distances. "Listen, she said you guys had an arrangement. She said you were cool with—" "She lied." Jared took a step closer. "Just like she's been lying to me since the day we met. But here's the thing, Nick. You're not the real problem. You're just a symptom, a disease. And diseases need to be eliminated." The younger man's athletic build meant nothing against Jared's cold fury and 15 years of disciplined gym training. When Nick finally made his move toward the door, Jared was ready. The fight was brutal, but brief. Nick's first swing went wide, his panic destroying his coordination. Jared caught his wrist, twisted sharply, and drove his knee into Nick's solar plexus. As the trainer doubled over, gasping, Jared grabbed the back of his head and slammed his face into the marble entryway table. Blood splattered across the white stone like abstract art. "You thought you were so clever," Jared panted, standing over Nick's groaning form. "Thought you found yourself a rich man's wife who'd pay for your fun, but you were just the entertainment. A distraction, while her real target was my bank account." He dragged Nick to the center of the living room, where the cameras would capture every angle. "Please, man," Nick wheezed through split lips. "I didn't know she was playing you too. She told me you were separated, that the divorce was already—" Jared's fist connected with Nick's jaw, snapping his head sideways. "More lies. Everything about this relationship has been lies." For the next 20 minutes, Jared methodically destroyed Nick's confidence, his ego, and his will to fight back. Every punch carried months of cheating. Every kick delivered the rage of a man who'd discovered his entire marriage was a performance. When it was over, Nick lay curled on the Persian rug, his designer workout clothes torn and bloodied, whimpering like a beaten animal. "Here's what's going to happen," Jared said, crouching beside him. "You're going to disappear from Marla's life. No phone calls, no texts, no accidental meetings at coffee shops. If I see you within 50 miles of my wife, this beating will feel like a gentle massage compared to what comes next." Okay, I get it. I'm not finished. Jared's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm also going to destroy your business. Those state health inspectors who've been meaning to check your gym's safety protocols, they'll be getting an anonymous tip about steroid distribution and unsafe equipment. Your insurance company will receive some interesting photos of you, shall we say, compromising a married client in her home? Your landlord will hear about the noise complaints and property damage you've been causing." Nick's eyes widened in terror. "You can't do that. That's my livelihood. Should have thought about that before you decided to make a career out of home wrecking." Jared stood, adjusting his shirt cuffs as if he'd just finished a business meeting. "Oh, and Nick, if you even think about warning Marla about our conversation, I'll release the bedroom footage to everyone in your contact list. Your family, your friends, your other clients, they'll all get to see what kind of man you really are." Jared left Nick bleeding on the floor and walked to his Range Rover without looking back. Phase 2 of his plan was complete. Now it was time to destroy the real architects of his betrayal. By Thursday morning, Jared had 3 different law firms working on his case. His divorce attorney, Patricia Valdez, specialized in high-net-worth marital dissolutions involving fraud. His civil litigation team was building cases for conspiracy, emotional distress, and identity theft. His criminal attorney was documenting everything for potential prosecution. "This is one of the most sophisticated marriage fraud schemes I've ever seen," Patricia said during their conference call. "Your wife and her mother didn't just plan a gold digger operation, they created a multi-layered criminal enterprise." Jared sat in his downtown office, spread sheets of financial records across his mahogany desk. "What are our chances in court?" "With the evidence you've gathered? Excellent. The text messages alone prove premeditation and ongoing conspiracy. The financial records show a pattern of payments contingent on maintaining the fraudulent relationship. And the surveillance footage." Patricia paused. "Well, let's just say no jury will have any sympathy for Mrs. King after they see her performance with her trainer. What about criminal charges? Fraud, conspiracy, possibly identity theft, depending on what financial documents she signed in your name. The district attorney's office is very interested in your case." That afternoon, Jared received a call from his civil attorney with even better news. "We've traced Brenda's financial history," the lawyer reported. "She's done this before. Twice. In California and Florida, she coached daughters through fraudulent relationships with wealthy men. Both times, the men were too embarrassed to press charges, so she moved on to the next state. But Texas isn't going to be so forgiving." "What does that mean for our case?" "It means we can prove this was a professional operation, not a crime of opportunity. Pattern evidence, similar fact testimony. The judge will throw the book at both of them." Friday evening, Jared made his final preparations. He'd already filed restraining orders against both Marla and Brenda, set to be served Saturday morning. Their bank accounts would be frozen pending the civil litigation. The guest house lease had been terminated with 24-hour notice, legal in Texas when fraud was involved. As he reviewed the papers one last time, Marla entered his study carrying a glass of wine. "You've been working so much lately," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "I feel like we haven't spent any quality time together since Mama left for her cruise." Jared looked at his wife, really looked at her. for perhaps the first time since discovering the truth. The practiced concern in her voice, the calculated way she crossed her legs, the timing of her appearance, just as he was handling legal documents. Even now, she was performing. "You're right," he said finally. "We should definitely spend more time together. In fact, I think tomorrow will be very educational for both of us." Marla smiled, missing the edge in his voice entirely. "I can't wait." As she left the study, Jared permitted himself a cold smile. His wife's performance was about to receive its final review, and the critics would not be kind. Saturday morning came with that crisp October air that made Austin shine, but Jared didn't feel it. All he felt was the tension, waiting for the legal gears he'd set in motion to start crushing his enemies. At 9 a.m. sharp, Travis County Sheriff's deputies knocked on both the main house and guest house doors simultaneously. Jared watched from his upstairs bedroom window as Brenda was served papers on the guest house porch, her Mediterranean tan fading to ash white as she read the restraining order and civil suit documents. In the main house, Marla's reaction was even more satisfying. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shrill with panic as she burst into Jared's study. "They said something about fraud and conspiracy. This has to be a mistake." Jared didn't look up from his newspaper. "No mistake. Though I understand your confusion. You've been living in a fantasy for so long. Reality must come as quite a shock. I don't understand what you're talking about. Brenda, you don't have to love him, baby girl. Just marry him and stay sweet. Your response? The $2,000 you're paying me monthly makes it bearable." Jared recited the text messages from memory, his voice devoid of emotion. "Should I continue? Or have you heard enough of your own words to understand the situation?" Marla sank into a chair, her perfect composure finally cracking. "Jared, please! You're a fraud. Your mother is a criminal. And your boyfriend Nick learned yesterday that actions have consequences." Jared finally looked at her, his eyes cold as winter stone. "The only thing I don't understand is how I was stupid enough to fall for it." "Nick? What does Nick have to do with—" "How do you know about Nick?" "Security cameras, financial records, phone surveillance. I know about everything, Marla. Every lie, every betrayal, every time you brought him into our bed while I was working to support the lifestyle you pretended to appreciate." Marla's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the calculating predator underneath. "Fine, yes. It started as Mama's plan. But I could have learned to love you, Jared. If you'd been more attentive, more what? More gullible? More what? More gullible? More willing to bankroll your affairs?" Jared stood, towering over her. "Save the performance for the jury. You're going to need all the practice you can get." The front door slammed open and Brenda stormed in like an avenging fury, the court papers crumpled in her fist. "You self-righteous piece of garbage," she screamed at Jared. "You think you're so smart with your lawyers and your money? We'll destroy you in court. We'll take everything you have." "No, Brenda, you won't." Jared's voice remained steady, but his eyes burned with controlled rage. "You see, I did some research on you. Turns out this isn't your first rodeo. Sandra Martinez in Los Angeles, 2018. Rebecca Chen in Miami, 2020. You've been running this same scam for years, coaching your daughter to defraud wealthy men." Brenda's face went pale. "You can't prove—" "I can prove everything. Bank records, witness testimony, pattern evidence. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in your multi-state operation." Jared moved closer, his presence filling the room. "You made one critical mistake, Brenda. You got greedy. Instead of taking a quick settlement and moving on, you tried to build a long-term extraction scheme. That gave me time to uncover everything. We'll file charges against you for—" Marla shouted, jumping to her feet. "For what? Investigating my own wife's criminal activity? Protecting my assets from fraud?" Jared laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Please do file charges. I'd love to explain to another judge how you've been stealing from me for months." Brenda grabbed Marla's arm. "Come on, baby. We're leaving. Let his fancy lawyers fight our fancy lawyers." "The restraining order requires you to stay at least 500 yards from this property," Jared said quietly. "And as of today, all your credit cards have been canceled, your bank accounts frozen, and your lease on the guest house terminated. You have exactly 1 hour to collect your personal belongings before security escorts you off the premises." "You can't do that," Brenda shrieked. "This is our home." "No, Brenda, this is my home. You were guests who overstayed your welcome." Jared checked his Rolex. 59 minutes and counting. As mother and daughter scrambled to pack their belongings, Jared felt the first genuine satisfaction he'd experienced in months. The game they'd been playing was over, and they were finally learning that he'd been the only one who understood the rules. 2 months later, the Travis County Courthouse buzzed with anticipation as King v. King and Brennan became the most talked about divorce case in Austin society. Local media had dubbed it the Puppet Master trial, and every seat in Judge Catherine Morrison's courtroom was filled. Jared sat at the plaintiff's table in a perfectly tailored navy suit, flanked by his legal team. Across the aisle, Marla and Brenda huddled with their defenders. "The plaintiff will present opening arguments," Judge Morrison announced. Patricia Valdez rose with predatory grace. "Your Honor, this case involves one of the most calculating marriage fraud schemes this county has ever seen. The defendants didn't simply lie to Mr. King. They created an elaborate criminal enterprise designed to systematically drain his wealth through psychological manipulation and premeditated deception." She gestured toward the evidence table, where phones, computers, and financial records were, displayed like exhibits in a museum of betrayal. "We will prove that Brenda Brennan orchestrated a multi-state criminal operation, coaching her daughter Marla to target wealthy men for financial exploitation. We will show documented evidence of monthly payments made to ensure Marla's continued participation in this fraud. And we will demonstrate that this conspiracy included planned infidelity as a tool of psychological control." The courtroom stirred as Patricia clicked a remote, displaying blown-up text messages on the main screen. "You don't have to love him, baby girl. Just marry him and stay sweet," she read aloud. "Your marriage is your paycheck now. These are not the words of a caring mother. These are the instructions of a criminal mastermind to her willing accomplice." Marla's attorney, a nervous young defender named James Walsh, did his best with an impossible case. "Your Honor, my client was a victim of her mother's manipulation. Brenda Brennan psychologically coerced her daughter into this situation. Marla King is as much a victim as her husband." But when the evidence presentation began, even Walsh seemed to lose heart. Jared took the stand with calm dignity, his testimony precise and devastating. "I believed I had found genuine love," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the packed courtroom. "Instead, I discovered I had been selected as a target for financial exploitation. My wife wasn't unfaithful because she fell out of love. She was unfaithful because her mother instructed her to maintain extramarital relationships as part of their criminal scheme." Patricia displayed the surveillance footage on a large screen, showing Nick entering and leaving the house while Jared was at work. Several jurors visibly winced. "Mr. King, how did discovering this betrayal affect you emotionally?" Jared's jaw tightened. "I felt violated in ways I didn't know were possible. My home, my bed, my trust, everything had been contaminated by their lies. I realized that every moment with my wife had been a performance designed to keep me compliant while they robbed me." When cross-examination began, Marla's attorney tried to paint Jared as controlling and vindictive. "Isn't it true, Mr. King, that you became violent when you discovered your wife's affair? I defended my property and my dignity when I confronted the man who was violating my home," Jared replied evenly. "Nothing more? You beat him severely, didn't you?" "I stopped a criminal from continuing his crimes." "If that makes me violent, then every property owner in Texas is violent." The judge sustained Patricia's objection, but the damage was done. Jared came across as justified rather than vindictive. Brenda's testimony was a disaster. Under oath, she tried to claim she was only trying to help her daughter find happiness. "I just wanted Marla to have financial security," she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I've been through difficult divorces myself. I know how important it is for a woman to protect herself." "Mrs. Brennan," Patricia said during cross-examination, "you testified that you were helping your daughter find happiness. But according to your own text messages, you told her explicitly that she didn't need to love Mr. King. How do you reconcile those statements?" I meant she didn't need to rush into deep feelings." "You also testified about protecting your daughter financially. But isn't it true that you were paying her monthly to stay married to my client?" "That was just household support." $2,000 per month in cash payments, conditional on maintaining the marriage, is household support?" Brenda's story fell apart under scrutiny, each answer contradicting the last. But Marla's testimony provided the trial's most dramatic moment. Taking the stand in a conservative dress clearly chosen to evoke sympathy, she attempted to portray herself as a victim of both her mother's manipulation and her husband's neglect. "I never wanted to hurt Jared," she said, tears streaming down her face. I was confused and scared. My mother convinced me that this was normal, that all wives had to secure their futures this way. Mrs. King, Patricia began her cross-examination. You testified that you were confused and scared. But your text messages show you actively planning your affair with Nick before your wedding day. Were you confused about that too? That's not what those messages meant. You wrote, and I quote, already working on that. Nick's been asking questions about when Jared travels for work. What did you mean by working on that? Marla's composure cracked. I don't remember exactly. You don't remember planning to cheat on your husband before you even married him? It wasn't like that. You're twisting everything. Mrs. King, did your mother pay you monthly to stay married to Mr. King? She helped with expenses. Yes or no? Did she pay you money conditional on remaining married? A long pause. Yes. Did you engage in extramarital relations with Nick Martinez while married to Mr. King? Another pause. Yes. Did you do so in the marital bed in Mr. King's home while he was working to support you financially? Marla broke down completely. Yes, but I never meant for it to go this far. It was supposed to be temporary. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison called for order, but the damage was catastrophic. Marla had just confessed to every element of the fraud under oath. Judge Morrison's verdict was swift and merciless. In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a calculated and cruel deception, she said, her voice cutting through the silent courtroom. The defendants engaged in a sophisticated criminal conspiracy that went far beyond simple infidelity or even gold digging. They created a fraudulent identity, established a fake emotional relationship, and systematically exploited the plaintiff's trust for financial gain. She looked directly at Brenda and Marla, both of whom seemed to shrink under her gaze. Mrs. Brennan, you orchestrated this scheme with the calculating precision of a career criminal. The evidence shows this is not your first attempt at marriage fraud, merely your most ambitious. You will face the full consequences of your actions. Mrs. King, you were not a victim in this conspiracy. You were a willing and enthusiastic participant. Your crocodile tears cannot wash away months of premeditated deception. The financial judgment was devastating. $2.3 million in compensated damages, $5 million in punitive damages, and forfeiture of all marital assets. Brenda and Marla were jointly and severally liable, meaning either could be forced to pay the entire amount. Additionally, the judge issued permanent restraining orders and referred the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. This court will not tolerate the systematic defrauding of Texas citizens, Judge Morrison concluded. The defendants will serve as an example to others who might consider similar schemes. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed as Jared emerged with his legal team. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, but he maintained his composure. Justice has been served, he said simply. I hope this case sends a clear message that fraud will not be tolerated, regardless of how it's disguised. Marla and Brenda tried to escape through a side exit, but photographers caught them anyway. The images, Brenda covering her face in shame, Marla sobbing hysterically, would dominate Austin news cycles for weeks. 6 months after the trial, Jared stood in his renovated home, every trace of Marla and Brenda's presence erased. New furniture, new paint, new memories waiting to be made with someone worthy of trust. His phone buzzed with an update from his private investigator. Brenda had been arrested in Phoenix, attempting to run the same scam on a casino executive. This time, however, her criminal record made conviction almost certain. She was looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Marla had fared even worse. Unable to pay the civil judgment, her wages would be garnished for the rest of her life. She'd moved back to her hometown in East Texas, working as a night shift server at a truck stop diner. The glamorous lifestyle she'd tried to steal had been replaced by exactly the kind of hardscrabble existence she'd schemed to escape. Nick had lost his gym, his clients, and his reputation after the health department investigation uncovered numerous violations. He'd moved back to Dallas, working construction and living in a studio apartment that cost more per month than he'd once made in a week. The civil judgment had been worth more than revenge. It had been about justice. But the real victory was simpler. Jared had reclaimed his life, his dignity, and his ability to trust his own judgment. As he poured himself a glass of wine, he'd been played by experts, but he'd responded like a professional. In the end, the truth had been more powerful than all their lies combined. His phone rang. Patricia Valdez calling with news about a book deal offer. Publishers were interested in his story as a cautionary tale about modern relationship fraud. Think about it, she said. Your experience could help other people recognize the warning signs. Jared considered the offer as he watched the Texas sunset paint his windows gold. Maybe it was time to help others avoid the trap he'd fallen into. Maybe some good could come from the worst experience of his life. Set up the meeting, he told Patricia. But I have one condition. Part of the proceeds go to a victims fund for relationship fraud survivors. People who've been through what I experienced shouldn't have to fight alone. As he hung up the phone, Jared allowed himself a genuine smile for the first time in months. He'd been torn down by experts, but he'd rebuilt himself stronger and wiser.